Let me bring up Mike Trey Chatfield, who really put this all together, and she's going to talk some more about the ACR registries.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for coming today. Well, let's get started. I want to tell you how special this day is for us. So I've been doing this job, managing the data registries, for just over 2 years. I took over from Laura Coombs, who many of you have spoken with, and she has been working with the registry since they started. And one of the earliest conversations she and I had was, wouldn't it be nice if we could get all our users in one room and have enough people to talk about and share ideas and have this momentum? And it's delightful to actually be at this moment. I know we've done webinars before, and that's great, but this is fantastic that we have all of us over here and we can actually talk about this stuff. So with that, what I'm going to do is to just give you a quick overview of NRDR. Many of you are participants, but I know there are some people in the audience who are not very familiar with how the registries work. So I'm just going to briefly catch everybody up and give you a sense of where we are with each registry. I'm going to try to not shove too many numbers at you, but just give you a flavor of what we have so far. That's our website, our brand new shiny website, which we will transition everybody to pretty shortly. It's, as Jeff told you, it's our database of independent registries. He's already talked about the history. As everybody in this room probably is aware, the guiding principle behind the registries is to implement the cyclical quality improvement process. We are on a 6-month reporting cycle for our reports at this point. At some point, we'll probably switch to quarterly. But the goal really is to find an easy way for facilities to transmit their performance data, receive their feedback reports every 6 months, implement any changes they want to, identify weaknesses, identify opportunities, and then continue submitting data and see how they do. And again, so to just reinforce, the goal of our quality registries is really to empower the facilities and our physicians. So we do primarily quality improvement research. There might be other questions you can ask of the data, but the goal really is quality improvement and to give the facilities a tool. So if it's not working for the facilities, we need to modify it. And we need to do this in a way that is easy and correct. And what I mean by that is it should not interrupt workflow at the facilities, and it should be standardized and meaningful so that when the facilities get the data back, they feel like they can actually do something with it because they have faith in the data. So the challenges, this is something Jeff touched on, and I just wanted to list a few of them. The first challenge we faced was standardization. So before you even visualize the registry and what comes about, you need to define what exactly you're going to measure and make sure it's interpreted the same way by everybody. To the extent that we can, this is why we use industry standards. We use DICOM structured reports. We use the BI-RADS Atlas. We also clearly specify data dictionaries, and then we hear back from our vendors and our facilities that it's not as clear as we thought it was, so we keep improving on the clarification, because if it's not standard, if it's not clear, there is no point to doing these comparisons. The next huge challenge has been automation. So our first few registries, CTC and GRID and ICE, are primarily web-based data entry, manual data entry registries, which works okay if you have a small number of observations to enter data on, especially for something like ICE, but it starts to get really challenging if there are a lot of data. And also, the more data entry you have people do manually, the more errors you have. So we've worked much harder on automation with our more recent registries. NMD and the Dose Index Registry are both fully automated. And every time we provide feedbacks and benchmark reports to the facilities, we try to have a conference call to make sure that our reports are easy to understand, and we try to make them customizable to the extent possible. So we initially started out with just PDF reports, but we found that many of our facilities wanted to do their own analytics. So we started providing the PDFs as well as the Excel spreadsheets with the data. So if you want to do something slightly different, you can. So we try to listen to everybody and accommodate as many requests as we can. It's a fairly simple and straightforward participation process. You sign a participation agreement, you go onto the website and you fill a simple one-page form. You get set up to send data, which is slightly different for different registries. In some cases, you designate a person to enter the data. In some cases, you have to call your software vendor to make sure you have the right version of the software for the mammography database. For the Dose Index Registry, we send you a link, you download the software, you install it. It's a fairly straightforward setup process, and then you start submitting data. And you obtain reports every 6 months, and you look look at how you're doing. There is a fee, but it's quite modest. There's a one-time registration fee to get in the door, and then there is a scaled scheme, and it really covers all the registries. So that should not, I mean, there's a fee, but it's not a huge barrier. So let's get into how we're doing. This is a summary information on participation, and I just listed out how many facilities we have registered and contributing data. There is generally a little bit of a lag in facilities contributing data because they get signed up, and then it takes them a little while to get the right software version, which is why you see the gap. The Dose Index registry has been by far the most successful registry, as you can see. It's only been up for about 1.5 years now, and it has way more participants than the other registries do. And I think the primary driver, as Jeff mentioned, was that dose has been in the news a lot. But I think the other part that helped is that it is fully automated. And once a facility gets set up, there's not much the facility needs to do, and they get these reports back. So that's kind of become what we want to do with our other registries, make it simple. So here is a snapshot of what kinds of facilities we have in the registry. We are really encouraged to see that a very large number of our participants are community hospitals and freestanding centers. It's not an academic-heavy registry. So we believe that it probably tells us something, that it's probably easy or doable for the community facilities that participate. We also have a fairly reasonable spread of facilities across different types of locations. We do have rural facilities, and they're spread across all parts of the country. And it's not just true of the registries collectively, it's also true of them individually. So the Dose Index Registry, the NMD, ICE, GRID, CTC, all of them, when you look across the board, they all have community facilities in them. So I'm going to do a status update in kind of decreasing order of participation. I figured I had to pick some order. So let's start with the Dose Index Registry. Like all other registries, it's primarily a tool to enable facilities to improve their protocols. One of the questions we get from the community is, do we track patient lifetime doses and things like that? We don't really, because one of the things we try to do with all of our registries is try to make it feasible to get started first. And we found that if we start asking for patient identifiers, it makes the facilities reluctant to participate. Beyond that, we don't have scientific consensus on what you do with patient data and how you add these up. So we figured that in the interest of getting data, getting this project started, we would start off by anonymizing. And if the science comes in and says we should be collecting patient data, we will then have a case to make and we can go back. But primarily, we are set up as a tool to help facilities optimize protocols and implement standards. Once we have enough data, we will be able to generate reference levels that everybody can use, but it's primarily a tool. It's a very straightforward registry. The data come directly from the scanner or the PACS to this piece of software you install at your facility, and then the data come through to us anonymized, and we generate reports. So here's the current status. We have 544 facilities that have registered. Not all of them have completed their participation agreements, which is why you saw a slightly different number on the previous slide. We have about 272 actively contributing data. We now are up to 3 million scans out of 1.7 million exams. So it's really growing pretty rapidly. I'm going to show you some summary statistics. So in our most recent report that came out just about a month ago, we had all of our exams mapped to standard RADLEX playbook IDs. Most of the exams were mapped by a vendor, by RADMAP, so that we could do it consistently across the board. And now we use this to inform future participants on how other facilities are mapping. So if you have an exam name that's similar to other facilities, you will have a suggested mapping that shows up with this consistent terminology. So we kind of seeded the database with a consistent set of mapping terms. For the first time, we included site-specific dose estimates for 4 exams. So instead of just looking at CT-DIVOL and DLP, we're actually adjusting for size. We had detailed charts for 14 exams for which we had at least 10,000 observations. And then in addition, we had more tabular data, which facilities could analyze themselves for 99 exams where we had 100 or more observations. And we have a whole bunch of other exams for which there's not enough observations to include in the report, but as participation increases, we expect these lists to get larger as well. For facilities that participate in the registry, you know that you get a variety of charts and histograms and box plots that show you how you compare to your peers. Here is just a summary of what the data look like in aggregate across the registry. The bars go from the 25th to the 75th percentile. The line in the middle is the median. So for 4 exams, we were able to get size-specific dose estimate. We are actually starting to have some ranges that can lead to benchmarks. We expect to clean up these data further and get them to publishable quality in the next few months. But this is just to show you that we're close. We're starting to really have the data to develop these kinds of benchmarks. And these are the 14 exams I mentioned for which all participating facilities receive detailed charts and comparisons. What's coming next? So as I mentioned, we've just started adjusting for patient sizes, and we do that by collecting scout images, localizer images, and using that to measure patient width. Later today, you'll be hearing from a speaker who actually helped us, who actually developed this tool for us that we use to do this measurement. We expect to add CRDR and fluoroscopy in the next year or two. So the goal is really to encompass all imaging modalities that use ionizing radiation. The registry with the second highest participation is the National Mammography Database. This uses data that facilities already have to collect under NQSA. So to that extent, it's not particularly burdensome because you don't have to go out and get any new additional information. But we still needed to map those data from what the facility has to something that the registry needs in a consistent way, because every facility customizes its database a little bit. So it has been a little bit challenging to make sure we get comparable data. Again, this is something you'll hear about later today from our facilities. But our goal was to leverage these data that are already there and generate not just benchmarks, but also comparisons, and provide facilities with an audit that we do the same way for every facility, and have it be compliant to BI-RADS, and so facilities can make meaningful comparisons to their peers. We have 12 commercial vendors and 2 proprietary systems that we have worked with to make sure that they can generate data in the format in which we need it. So those are our certified vendors, and we welcome any additional vendors to come sign up and work with us to be certified. And we've actually worked pretty successfully with facilities with their own proprietary systems, so you don't have to have a commercial piece of software for this to work. Every 6 months, we provide physician and facility level data to the facilities. Just in the last 2 reports, we've had enough data to do comparisons, not just to national benchmarks, but also to similar facilities. So if you're an academic facility, you receive a comparison to other academic facilities, same type of location, same region. When the BI-RADS 5th edition comes out, we anticipate adding ultrasound and MRI audits to the National Mammography Database. So that's the next steps. Here are some sample feedback reports. Just like the other registries, we have comparison charts, trends, histograms, and bar charts. For those of you who've seen your DIR, Dosinex registry reports, you know how these work. Here are some summary results. What I did for the NMD was I tried to show you a comparison between what we have in the National Mammography Database and the Breast Cancer Surveillance Consortium, which really have the definitive benchmarks because they've been collecting data for a long time. And we don't have as many observations as the benchmark data had to generate the tables that they did. But we're getting up there. We have over 750,000 exams over a 6-month period that we could use to generate these tables. And for the most part, the NMD numbers do not look all that different from the BCSE. They're kind of converging towards the BCSE numbers. We know that some of our facilities are still having some challenges to make sure the vendor is mapping data the way they think they are. I think it's just a matter of all the parties working together, so people understand what we need and what needs to be sent. But I think we are closing in on data that are reliable. And again, this is something that we anticipate making easier when the 5th edition of BIRADS comes up, because we will have a new data dictionary from the National Mammography Database. We've learned from things that were not clear the last time around, and we hope to make it more clear for the next round. The IV contrast extravasation registry has been extremely popular because it is a well-defined and an easy-to-complete PQI project. Facilities can find it on the ABR website. They can find it on the ACR website. It tells you what to do. The forms are easy to complete, and there is something finite that you get out of it. Currently, the comparisons are all to literature, to benchmarks that are in the literature, but we are starting to collect enough data that the registry may be able to start updating or creating its own benchmarks. So far, we have 18 facilities that have completed 2 cycles of data submission. So they've completed their practice quality improvement project. They submitted 1 round of data, implemented an improvement plan, submitted a 2nd round of data. We have 26 additional facilities that are in the pipeline. We have data on 829 extravasations in the registry, and we're starting to have some real data. The extravasations are a rare enough event that you don't see dramatic changes when people go to improvement plans, but we're still starting to see trends in the right direction, that the extravasation volumes are smaller, the severity of injuries is less mild. The General Radiology Improvement Database is our broad general purpose registry where we collect data on the practice of radiology across the board, wait times, turnaround times, incident reports. And we have 2 levels of participation, green and gold, and there is no difference in what you do to sign up. The only difference is how much data you wish to share. So some facilities find it really onerous to collect outcomes data, and they only want to give us process measures, such as wait times and turnaround times, and that's fine. And they get to be a green facility, and they're only compared to other facilities that provide that. They're compared to all facilities that provide process measures. The gold facilities are the ones who want to provide outcome data as well, and so they're compared to other facilities that provide outcome data. The data are primarily entered manually on web-based forms, but we also have the capability to accept uploads of flat files. So if a facility has a system to run queries and generate Excel files with data in a particular format, you can just click and upload, and you don't have to enter data for each physician or each month. We are working with vendors and with facilities to automate grid data collection further. So if any of you have any suggestions based on what you do in your practice on how to make it easy to automate collection of turnaround times, we'd be delighted to hear your ideas. We're looking for ways to make this easy. As I mentioned, we collect some process measures such as wait time, turnaround time, and some outcome measures. We also collect just facts about the practice, what kind of structural measures you have in place and protocols. The sample report page is similar to what you saw with the other registries. There are trends, there are comparisons. Like all of our other registries, we compare each metric to the corresponding metric at facilities like yours. We don't have a great deal of data in GRID. We have about 20 facilities. But again, we are starting to develop some measures on things like turnaround time, because this is a measure that we tend to get from almost all of our participating facilities. So we're starting to develop some kind of data. And we do notice it's kind of hard to see across the board. So I tried to plot out what happened with turnaround time by modality over time. And for most of the charts, there is a slow downward trend. So it appears that we are having an effect. Facilities participating in the registry are looking at their data and doing something to improve their turnaround times. Finally, the CT colonography registry, which again is a fairly simple registry. We just collect 3 process and 3 outcome measures. The data are collected on web-based forms, so it is manual. It was our first registry to be launched, so it's not as automated as any of the others. We are, again, working on seeing how we could coordinate this with the dose index registry and automate at least part of the data collection. We are starting to offer some discounted participation to make it easy. This registry has been particularly challenging because there's not much reimbursement for screening, CTC, so the facilities are not doing huge volumes of this. So they don't feel like they're doing enough volume to justify participating in the registry. So it's been a little difficult to get participation. So those are the process measures and the outcome measures that we track. Our sample benchmark reports, again, like all the other registries, shows each facility where they stand relative to their peers. But even in this registry, small as it is, and we haven't had data for a very long time, we are starting to see improvements. So this is just an example of an adequacy measure of screening CTC exams. And the blue line shows you how they did on the measure. And as facilities stayed in the registry and participated and looked at their data, the metric got better. So coming soon to all of our registries, we are in the process of developing and finalizing a marketing toolkit. We know that many of the registries that participate, many of the facilities that participate in our registry really do a very good job. They might identify some opportunities for improvement, but across the board, there are many things that they do well. And they can use their near-year benchmark reports to monitor and publicize this evidence. So what we are developing is a marketing kit that will have a sample press release that you could use and customize and use, so it's ready. We also have we also have ads that you can use that you can customize and use. We have tabletop signs. And again, if you have suggestions for other things you would like, we can work with you and expand on this. But we have a starter kit that all participating facilities will get a link to fairly shortly. This is who we are. That's our email and our phone number. And it's a 4-person team, and I imagine you've talked to participating facilities that probably talked to most of us at one time or the other. And we thank you for your participation.